Welcome, everybody, to the CPG C-Suite. We are not an average corporate crew. We are a lively mix of CPG enthusiasts from the CPG Co-op. We also are called the Co-opers, blending expertise, passion, and a pinch of humor to spice up your brand journey. Join us as we dish out hot takes, fresh insights, and a few laughs, turning the often daunting CPG world into an adventure. Whether you're looking to level up or just love what you do a little more, the CPG Suite is your VIP pass to top shelf of brand brilliance. Buckle up and let's go. So this is our first episode of the CPG Suite, and we are the CPG Co-op, well, some of us. And our first topic is going to be scaling kitchen to shelf. And so I'm going to welcome our first guest, Chi Nguyen, who is go-to-market strategy.
Thank you for having me.
And Ryan, who is also our Amazon expert. Or did you just say Amazon? And Wayne, who is strategic insights, business planning, and marketing.
Nice to be here.
Yes, and I'm Emily Keeley. I am the founder of the CPG Co-op, and I have the sheer privilege of working with these wonderful humans who want to make CPG a little less daunting for brands, emerging brands, and even big brands. So the first thing we're talking about, and I'm really excited because it's about the 90s, and I'm a 90s kid. I feel like I need my Nine Inch Nails shirt to come back out.
I was going to wear my Hammer pants for you, but decided against it.
Are your Chucks?
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
so we are talking about 90s snacks, and I'm going to say something really gross about myself from high school. I used to have the brown sugar Pop-Tarts, and I put them in the microwave with melted butter, and I'd eat like 2 of them. So that's, that's my... So what do you guys think? Wayne, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about this 90s trend? We have a few options up here, like legendary Pop-Tarts. Speaking of brown sugar pop, I pulled the right one.
There you go.
This is it.
Calling
so
your
how
name.
are you feeling about these 90s trends seeing it come back?
I love it. I mean, it's all about nostalgia, right? And it's all about going back to times of comfort and you know, what familiar experiences and things like that. And a lot of these 90s trends are coming back, but they have like a slant on health, right?
Yeah.
But there's one, I've always felt like for every trend is a counter trend. And there's one brand that has come around that I think is fascinating, and it has nothing to do with health. It's just purely nostalgia, and that's a Waffle Crisp. Back in the mid 90s when they launched Waffle Crisp, it was just like truly part of cereal culture back in the 90s, and it lasted about 20 some odd years. But then when the health craze started kicking in more, it started dissipating and losing distribution, and then it got discontinued about 20 some odd years later. But then, because of some social media responses and some consumer buzz, the brand came back, and it was introduced back in the after COVID. I think it was 2021, and it's doing great. It's like it just brings people think about it as the time when when they were kids in the 90s. They're thinking about it now. It's like at times of uncertainty, and they just want some of that comfort back, and the beauty of it is they didn't change the formula. They updated the graphics, but they didn't do anything from a health standpoint, which I think is encouraging, because again, everybody wants to be healthy, but at the same time, you want to make sure you're enjoying your food.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, that's what sticks out to me.
I love it.
100%.
Gee, you're from the 90s.
Oh my gosh. I loved the 90s. I thought I was like thriving.
So did
in
I.
The 90s. But then I look back at pictures, I'm like, not thriving. Not thriving. Okay, so I love, of course, the soda sort of reinvention of the soda, right? So
here,
where there's Poppi, there's Olipop. I could not get myself to drink a full can of sugar soda after high school, because I was like, oh my God, the sugar. And but I loved it, of course, but I just kind of weaned myself off. So now that when these started becoming popular, I was like, oh my gosh, root beer, the kind of the lemon lime, like
cherry limeade.
Yeah, like cherry limeade, just the colas, 35 calories, minimal sugar. I just feel okay about it. And so I love that sort of resurgence of the 90s.
Yeah. Ryan, your take.
Yeah, well, I was born in the 90s.
So
we're starting to feel really
showing
old.
off.
Okay.
Now showing off.
Ryan, get out of here right now.
Right.
I'm sorry, guys.
So, yeah, I mean, it's...
Was it 90 or 99?
93.
Okay. All right.
93. But, so... a lot of these remakes are, snacks that I grew up with. So it's like the snack that raised a generation, right? Yeah. And so like Wayne mentioned, it's definitely like that nostalgic, like that comfort feel of like when everything was easy as a kid. And I think a lot of consumers want that indulgence, but also health benefits. And that's what a lot of these products like Olipop, Poppi, huge Pop-Tart fan, so I feel you. Didn't add the butter, but that's a wonderful idea.
If you add butter, it makes it better, but don't do that. And there's another one. I used to eat the powdered donuts, and there's like Glonuts here, but I used to eat like the sleeve. I do not know how my cholesterol is not okay. But I think there's also one here, and they're actually from Austin. We are actually in Austin, Texas. I should probably point that out, that we are in Austin, Texas. But we're from all over. But this is one Funky Mellow, and it's Dipsters. And I'm actually one of the founders, but it's plant-based. But it's like the Dunkaroos. Oh. And I give this to our daughters, and they love this stuff. So, and I think, this really lends itself into our next big topic, guys, which we're moving into what we call the Brainstrust. And the founders here who are here in Austin, and all of these founders had to start somewhere, including Poppi, which started out as Mother and moved into, and now we all know what's happened with Poppi, which congratulations, also an Austin-based brand. Just want to point that out, everyone. But they all had to start somewhere. And we're very fortunate on our team. We have two founders. We also have Amazon. But we have two founders here who have also done this from scaling from kitchen to shelf. And so I'm going to start with our two fantastic founders, and you have to tell us what you've done and how you did this, because this is so important, because so many founders out in the CPG space, this is where they start. You start in the kitchen, you start as a mad scientist, you have this idea, you can't get out of your head, and you have sleepless nights until you make it come to a reality, right? But how do you do that? And how do you know when to turn it off from being in the kitchen to actually taking it to production so you can get on the shelf? And then Ryan will move to you on the digital shelf side. Yes. Okay. So Chi, I'm going to start with you, and I'd love to hear your quick story and maybe a few bullet points of things you've learned, then how you learned to get onto shelf, and like when to start and stop things as you grew.
So, I think mine was a little bit of a different scenario.
Do you want to say where you're from or what you started?
Oh, yes. Hi. Hello. Thank you. So I'm Chi. I'm the founder of Purpose Tea. It's a mission-driven beverage brand that features a new innovation in tea. It's a brew tea that's made from a purple tea leaf. So when I started, I actually thought about kind of the end point in mind.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to tinker around in my kitchen. I, of course, tinkered and, made my teas, and I'm an avid tea drinker. But I actually reached out and some folks in the network and asked for a food scientist, like any recommendations on a food or beverage scientist, so I could get the formula together without me having to go through and wasting a ton of time on what is scalable in the long run, because I knew that I wasn't going to be making this in my kitchen for a beverage. So I wanted to kind of start there.
Which is a great way to start, right? For some brands, and some brands may not think of it that way. Actually, Monty, who will join us later, we were talking about that. So that's really good. So you went straight to a food scientist.
And it's more affordable than you think, because you can find some food scientists that understand the manufacturing process, that understand what you need to scale, and they factor that into your recipe in the beginning. So you kind of skip maybe some of the I didn't know that we had to heat pasteurize. Oh, geez, there's this whole other process that's going to affect the taste. And so I kind of skipped that because I knew that I wasn't going to be creating cases of tea in my kitchen. So I think I'm a little different in that respect. So I started with the end in mind. But I don't know about you, Wayne. I'm sure you have some other great stories in the kitchen.
Wayne and I have a great story together.
Yes.
With this one.
With
I can't wait to hear it.
We had so much fun doing it.
Again, one is Wayne Luciano, and I'm one of the co-founders of a brand called Just Like Home Pasta Sauce. And about 15 years ago, I had this idea, and I didn't do anything with it for a while. And then I just said, you know what, now's the time. And about 5 years ago, we launched it. The concept was to have real pasta sauce lovers who have their own pasta sauce recipes. And we had a contest, and Emily and she ran that contest.
If you ever need a recipe contest, contact us.
And we got some great recipes in, and we selected about 8 or 10 that we really liked, but then we narrowed it down to 6. And the idea was to say, okay, we'll get these real pasta sauce recipes from real pasta sauce lovers. And we put the picture or an illustration of their face on the label. And then we had a donation to homeless shelters for every jar sold. We didn't skimp on ingredients. I'm a foodie at heart. And so I just loved it. We didn't skimp on ingredients. We made this thing taste awesome. And we launched it late 2020. And we started getting a lot of good momentum. Margins were a little tight, but we said, okay, well, we'll get some scale going. We'll be okay. And then ultimately what happened was we got accepted into a huge retailer that covered 26 states after we were already in about 53 stores and we were doing fairly well. And that's the key there, is to make sure you got the right velocity before you expand further. And
can you talk about that? Can I stop you on that one right there about velocity and like what that means for founders? Because I think this is where I think people can trip up and make mistakes. Would you like? Can you go into that just like a little bit deeper? I'd appreciate it. I'd like to talk to you about that too, because how you've scaled that at retail as well. So I'd love you to expand.
Yeah. The key there is to make sure you're at a level of turns, they call it. So how many jars of sauce are you selling per store per week? And obviously in the beginning, it's not going to be much, but you want to trend up. And so we launched at Market Street and Albertsons Market and United Supermarkets in Texas and New Mexico. And it was 53 stores, and we focused and we gave the right amount of attention on ad support, and the buyer loved us. So the buyer was giving us great shelf space, and it was just fantastic. And so things were starting to trend up pretty good. And then we got an opportunity to be at a large retailer, about almost 400 stores. And it wasn't on our list. That's the thing. It wasn't on our target list of retailers. It was a specialty channel. And we were like hesitant to say, well, do we do it or do we not do it? And there are pros and cons of that. And we ultimately decided to do it. But in hindsight, we probably shouldn't have, because that really drained us from the standpoint of funds and margin. And then it kind of knocks you off track a little bit. So you've really got to be, careful on that. When you launch a brand, have a universe of distribution that you plan on. And the only thing in life you can plan is to be surprised, as I always say, right? So we were surprised we got this interest from this retailer, and we said, okay, now we can be in more distribution centers. We can start having more of a national footprint. But we just didn't have the margins there at the time, because they were really tight with that retailer, and the support we had to give to keep it going was draining us. So you just got to be careful. Is my biggest lesson learned.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, because we talked to a lot of founders, and I think that when you get a sexy PO, I said we should like make a shirt that says that when you get a sexy PO, you're like, well, how could I turn this down? And one of the founders I was working with a few years ago, they were in 4,000 stores. And the recommendation was to peel back. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you need to. Your margins are too tight. So I loved,
I think that's where the fundamental sort of yin and yang with a founder, an entrepreneur, it's like you want to go.
Right.
You think you want to grow. But in CPG, and I made this mistake, and I think a lot of founders probably make this mistake because of that sort of, opposing forces. But you need to go a mile deep and an inch wide and prove yourself out at a retailer or a set of retailers and maybe a set of doors before you expand. Because unless you're really capitalized super well, I'm talking millions of dollars of fundraising, then what you're going to be doing is making mistakes on a larger scale, which is a lot more expensive. And so if I had to redo it again, which I have, I've scaled back and said, no, let's just make sure that our velocities are where we need to be at a key retailer, focus on this retailer. And then that will create a flywheel effect, and you will grow when the time is right.
And where are you? You're in Central Market, Whole Foods?
Central Market, Whole Foods. And so we're really focused on, because our product is a bit more of a accessible premium, but it's different. Like, people don't know what purple tea is. So for us to expand in anything other than, the natural and specialty channel just doesn't make a ton of sense for us now until the consumer education is, where we want it to be.
Right.
Otherwise, we would just be putting money towards, ads and top of funnel awareness and all that without a lot of transactions or sales,
Right.
you know?
The other thing that's really important to build on that is do a lot of test and learns, because what's working, what's not. If you have limited dollars, you're going to want to do a lot of retailer specific programs, because you're not in 80% ACV or 80% distribution in a certain market. You may be in 2%.
Right. Okay.
So you can't be doing, a radio campaign or this big, spot TV or anything. You got to be digital focused, social media, like geo-targeting. But even that, you've got to test certain messages. You got to test certain programs.
A/B testing,
what works
baby. This
and
is
what
how this
doesn't,
works.
right? Because I can't tell you how many founders over my lifetime that I've spoken to when I was consulting or just through my career get so excited when they say, I just got into Walmart, or I just, got into here. It's like,
And you're like,
and I said, okay, you know what? While that's a challenge, that's a great challenge. It's a great accomplishment, but that's the easy part. Right?
Yeah.
You want the shoppers to take you off the shelves, not the buyers. Okay. That's what I always say, because it's like, okay, you're on there, but now are you going to get lost in the sea of brands? Are you going to, I mean, the pasta sauce category was incredibly competitive from a merchandising standpoint.
Yeah.
And there's a sea of brands and you just got to stick out. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to fall into the background and you're just going to have those slow turns.
Well, I have a quick other question for you guys. Were you guys either one of you on Amazon? Are you on Amazon?
Mhm.
You're on Amazon. Were
Yes.
you were on Amazon too?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Amazon. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Because I think this is also this is also a shelf, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I hear, I laugh too, because obviously retail is a challenge, and we all know that's a challenge. We've heard the stories, and they're like, "Well, just go be on Amazon," and I'm like, I feel like that's a lift too. So, Ryan, I'd love for you to talk about that shelf space and what that looks like for brands, and like any recommendations that you might have of best practices, or should you jump into Amazon? Because that's what I hear. That's what I hear people giving advice on the most. Like, do that first, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, always will say yes, be on Amazon, right? You need to be defending your brand, but like, let's make sure we're ready for Amazon, right? Some, think you can just throw your product up, you're good to go. I'm on Amazon. Like, let the sales come in.
Yeah.
Definitely having a well thought out strategy. Like Wayne said, the pasta space, very competitive. How are you going to stand out against all of the other competitors on this digital shelf?
Yeah.
And just to give kind of like some, data here, but customers go to Amazon. 73% of product searches start on Amazon. So it's,
I feel like they do.
73%. I mean, think we're all shoppers here, right? You're looking at a new product, you're wanting to test out pricing. What are you doing? You're pulling out your phone, you're viewing Amazon.
And reviews, right? You want to see the reviews.
I was about to say, if I like the reviews,
Huge.
and reviews make my decisions for me.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, real quick.
We'll talk about reviews too in a later episode of like brand story and how that plays into effect. But a big advice I would recommend to brands is don't be siloed, right? Some people are like, well, D2C, and Amazon is just as much of a shelf as like D2C as a brick and mortar. And once you need to think of like how the shopper thinks, right? They're fluid with their shopping. They're asking themselves, okay, who has the best price? Where do I trust to shop? Yeah. And so you kind of have to think as the customer, which, we're, like I mentioned, we're all shoppers ourselves too. So just think how you would normally shop, incorporate that into your brand. Don't get siloed into just one area.
When Wayne was my client back in the day, what we used to tell the team was that a brand, if you're like a food brand, I think back then, this is way back in the day because we're old, was you to see the brand 7 times in 7 different ways on social, on Amazon, at retail. And I don't want founders to feel pressured that way, right? But it could be, there's a mixture and a blend here that really plays out for brands, even on a limited budget, which we can also help with. So,
did you feel like that so there was a time where you did D2C and you did D2C well, and then you expanded into retail. But I feel like that time, because it's so competitive now in the space with ad spend and just the digital, is just so daunting for some brands, that an omni-channel approach in a very tight geographic region, I think actually works. Like, we look at some of our Amazon shoppers and we see like the areas and the regions where there's so much, distribution or sales. And it typically is in the regions that we have distribution as well, like physical distribution.
Yeah.
So it really can play off each other if you play that omni-channel strategy correctly.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes here, but I did want to say, just to highlight that actually we do recommend like focusing on a market. Austin's a really fantastic market for that as well. There's lots of boutique stores. There's H-E-B. We have Central Market, which is my place, and Whole Foods obviously is based here. Plus, it's pretty easy to target people here if you have a brand. So we recommend actually the geographic part first, and then expanding. So I'm going to go. We're going to wrap it up here. So I'm going to give one piece of advice from each of you to founders who are looking to scale. Chi, what you got?
I would say just ensure that your margins are healthy enough to be able to scale. I think setting that sort of foundational piece of your business is critical. Understanding COGS, understanding how much trade dollars you think you're going to be spending in your first emerging years, how much of that can be, leveraged for cash flow and for marketing, for all these other needs that you're going to need, right. I think is critical. Otherwise, you'll run out of cash, which most of us always do, in early stage businesses.
And that's a different episode that we got.
Right. But at least you understand, like, okay, there's room for me to get to a certain place if my margins are this. So really understanding that, I think, is just so critical. And I think a lot of founders solve it as they're going. Mm-hmm. But if they know it in the beginning, I think they can work towards more profitability.
I love it. Ryan, what you got? What's your one tip? Amazon.
Yeah. Mine's kind of a two-part. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
All right. So first is definitely adaptability. Don't get like married to just one idea and stick with that, especially with Amazon. Amazon changes, like, it feels like almost every day. So you're going to have to adapt and be open to change and shifting strategy. Maybe like a week after you just did another strategy. And then just with Amazon specific, because you are having to stand out against so many competitors, is invest in photography for your listing. That's a big one.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. Invest in photography.
Well, and from a marketing perspective, I would also support this idea. I come from a marketing land, and great photography sells. And Wayne and I knows this. Wayne, you're going to end on a pro tip from you.
Well, I'm going to repeat what she said, and that's margins. And I want to just dive a little deeper, because understand your costs, and truly, whether it's Amazon, and I'll tell you, we were losing a lot of money on Amazon. We're shipping heavy jars of sauce, and then you dive deep into the Amazon fees and everything. It's like it's crazy. Mm-hmm. But regardless of Amazon, understand your costs, and margins are critical. And the one other thing that we experienced was we had our co-packer, our contract manufacturer, gave us these volume levels. Obviously, the more volume, the better variable costs you're getting. Mm-hmm. But he was letting us store our product in his warehouse, and so we didn't have to worry about 3PL costs.
Right.
Until it got to a certain level. Mm-hmm. So, but even at that level, whatever savings we're going to get on a per jar cost savings, that was going to be eaten up by the 3PL cost. Mm. So we were going to sort of net out. So just truly understand your costs, because without margins, you're not going to have a business.
Yes. I feel like we need to bring our finance people in here and have them, just tell us too, because it's true. Margins. That is the real, everyone's shaking their head. Yes. Wayne, you do say one thing that I love, and I'm going to close out. You say, what do you say? You have to slow down to go fast. What is my favorite thing you say?
Oh, okay.
Ready? This is a tip.
Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. There you go. That's I heard that from some military person years ago, and I was like, well, that's really good.
I love it.
Yeah.
My dad was military and said, improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I think that is also a t-shirt for CPG founders as well. So
100%.
So Chi, Ryan, Wayne, thank you guys so much for being here. I just love it. And once again, thank you guys for joining us. And we are making CPG a little less chaotic, one episode at a time. Thank you for coming to the CPG Suite.